All right, what up YouTube? So I have an amazing interview with Will Martino, the president of Kadena, previously was the CEO. Him and Stuart Popejoy are co-founders of Kadena. I thought that they were co-CEOs. So Will was originally the CEO and he stepped down, handed it over to Stuart. Now Stuart's the CEO and he's absolutely crushing it. But before we dive into this interview, I just want to say special thanks to everybody that supports this channel, everybody in the Kadena army. It's really amazing seeing so many people come into the Kadena community. And I honestly could probably show you guys at least 1,000 messages from so many different people saying, thank you, man. Thank you for making your videos on Kadena. Kadena's changed my life. My portfolio's never been this big. This isn't crazy. This is the first time I've gotten into one of those altcoins that really did a 7x, a 10x, a 15x. It is really exciting, guys. And I'm honored to be a part of it. And I'm honored that the Kadena team also shows this channel so much love and support, because I think that this project is really just getting started. Everybody asks me Kadena's at 20 something dollars. I missed the boat. I missed the boat on Kadena. And I don't think people really understand what Kadena is. To me, Kadena right now at this price point would be like investing in Ethereum when it was $10. I can't really think of any way else better to put it. Bitcoin at 250, Ethereum at $10, BNB at $20. Do you guys remember when BNB was sitting at 20 and Binance Smart Chain launched? And then what was it? 3 months later, we were at 600 something. What do you guys think is gonna happen when Kadena's? And what do you guys think is gonna happen when Kadena's DeFi pops off? What up, Will? Welcome to the show, man. I'm so excited to have you on. Everybody's been asking about you and finally was able to get you on the show, man. So I'm gonna let you introduce yourself and we'll dive right in.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ryan. I am Will Martino. I am the president and co-founder of Kadena. And my background is I got into crypto in a weird way. I was at the SEC and I was building a high frequency trading analytics platform there. And when Valerie formed the crypto working group, they needed a tech lead who understood the tech and didn't own any coins. So I decided that instead of buying Bitcoin at 60, I would become the tech lead when she founded the group. After that, I went to JP Morgan and ended up on their blockchain center for excellence with my co-founder, Stuart Popejoy, and we built their first blockchain. I built the actual distributed system side of it. And then a few years after that, Stu and I left and founded Kadena. And I focused more on the the design of the protocol. So I built our private blockchain. I designed our public blockchain, Chainweb, and came up with the architecture, but I didn't actually personally code it. I was doing CEO stuff at the time. And but I did also work on the formal verification, the first proof of concept for that for Pact. It was kind of a crazy idea that I'd had. I went to Stu and was I think we could do formal verification on Pact directly. Can you go build a type system? And he's like, yeah. All right, I'm gonna go and assume that you built a type system. I'm gonna go build the compiler for C3. And then 2 months later, we're presenting it at the first Stanford blockchain conference, which back then was called BPACE, I think. Jeez. And yeah, now I'm here. So it's been 6 years now, 5.5. It's been a crazy few weeks, but finally we've gotten over this hurdle of getting the army together and getting known. And now that we're past that, I'm ready to go at it.
I'm so excited for you guys, man. I think you guys are 1 in 13,000 right now. It's been that long since I stumbled upon a project that I thought had that much real world potential. Can you talk a little bit more about scalability and proof of work versus proof of stake? I try to explain it, but I know you'll do a better job at it.
Sure, it's hard to explain. And it's hard to explain in a way that everyone gets. I've been trying to sell it, to VCs and for years and talk about it. It's helpful now that we have so many proof of stake projects that have launched that we can actually start to think about this stuff and actually see in production, okay, what does this stuff look like? So, Ethereum runs at about 15 transactions a second. It's a proof of work network, which means you have miners who are mining new transactions into new blocks, and then you put another block after that. So, every block has only so many transactions, and it averages out to about 15 transactions a second. I think Bitcoin is running at about 8 a second. And there was this idea that you could, the what everyone's always wanted to do is scale this up so that you could move global settlements onto a public blockchain, because 8 transactions a second or 15 isn't enough. And hell, even like 1,000 or 2,000 isn't going to be enough for real world adoption. We're talking about global adoption, touching everyone. Everyone's using it on their phones, probably behind the scenes. They don't even realize it, but it becomes a global settlement. And everyone's been researching this for since basically when Bitcoin came out. There have been a few different tactics taken. I mean, right now the stopgap is that Ethereum only does X transactions a second, so they have what are called layer 2 solutions. So layer 1 is the actual base currency, or the base, and then on top of that, you can plug layer 2 solutions in. These are either zero knowledge rollups, which basically take a bunch of transactions that happen off to the side and they put them into a little cryptographic ball, and then that gets settled onto mainnet. So you're like, think of it like compression, where you're compressing transactions that are off chain, and then you're the sum of them you're actually settling on chain. And the other way of doing it is that you have a side chain. So if you think about Cosmos is very much based on this idea that you have a internet of blockchains, quote unquote, where you have like one main ledger and then you have apps that have their own chain, and that works. The hard part of it is that for you to go build an app, you actually now have to run an entire protocol and then build your app on top of it, which makes it pretty hard to actually get going. It's way better if you can actually just deploy your application to a layer 1 solution and not have to worry about operating the actual blockchain itself, because people may not realize, but operating a blockchain is actually kind of hard. So that's why people have been looking at, okay, how do you scale layer 1? How do you get it to be able to handle whatever the throughput, the transaction demands of adoption are? And there's this notion of what's called sharding. Sharding comes from the idea of old database technology, where a database and it gets too big, you can do what's called partitioning, which is where you take, let's say it's an equities trading database. You take the first half of the alphabet, those equity ticker symbols, and you put it in one database, and then you put the rest in another database, and now you can do twice as many transactions a second because you can load balance them between the two. And you can do that again and again and again. So the idea with sharding is similar, where you're going to take where the transactions get processed, this line of blocks, and you're actually going to break it apart into separate environments so that you can have multiple transactions going on in parallel. So when people talk about, and there's a few different approaches, some people talk about DAGs, which are directed acyclic graphs, which basically means that blockchain that can evaluate 2 transactions in parallel, so long as they don't interact with each other. There's a number of projects that go this route. The problem with DAGs is that there's a fundamental law in computer science called Amdahl's law that says that basically you're only ever going to see between a 6 and a 10x speed improvement over if you weren't using a DAG, if you just had a single stream of transactions like a normal blockchain. And we've seen in practice that DAGs have this problem as more of the blockchains have been deployed. What it basically comes down to is you have this small world problem where most transactions on the network are linked causally within a few steps of each other. It's kind of like the super connectors when you're trying to connect with people. You can basically get from any 2 people in the world through maybe 6 or 7 jumps, because there are these major hubs of this person knows a ton of people, and then that basically causally connects 2 people who are just never met and never would.
Yep.
Same thing happens with the transactions. So DAGs don't really work. They're like a finite speed bump, but you don't end up with a unlimited scalable approach to increasing your performance. And that's really what scalability means, and what a lot of people in the industry have seemed to have forgotten, that scalability means doing it and keep going up in scale, and you don't have a limit, you don't have a cap. So the importance of it is that as you start to get adoption, Binance Smart Chain is a great example. Ethereum's gas fees are very high. Binance released Binance Smart Chain. Its selling point was that our gas fees are lower. Come deploy your apps on us. And that was true until it got adoption, and then it got clogged, and then the gas fees went up.
Yep.
And this happens to literally every blockchain that gets adoption, because there is demand to do serious work on these things, but they can't scale up past whatever their fixed cap is. And solving the scalability problem is what Kadena is focused on and what it's done. And the way that we've totally different from everything else in the industry, one of the few proof of work projects that's launched recently, whole industry has gone proof of stake. And the reason is that we figured out how to actually scale. And it just so happens that it requires proof of work. So you can't scale a proof of stake system. There's this thing called the trilemma, which Vitalik coined. It dates back to the CAP theorem, or it's very related to the CAP theorem, which comes out of distributed systems. But the trilemma is just, you can either be decentralized, have security, or have performance. But of those 3, pick 2. You can't ever have all 3. And that is true for proof of stake networks. So the ones that are the fastest partitioned ones, or the sharded ones, end up being usually very centralized, but they have security and they have scalability. And that is a huge what will be eventually a huge regulatory risk. But we're just not there yet. The regulators haven't caught up. But that will eventually be a big problem because like one of the core features of proof of work is that miners are anonymous, and that if a pool goes down, you just point miners somewhere else, and you can always mine to a different key on every single block. Like it's a huge part of how the system works, and it's been recognized internationally as being fundamentally different from money transmission and not being, related to those rules. Whereas I'm a big believer that proof-of-stake validators actually wouldn't have to become money transmitters or get regulated in that way down the line, but it's probably going to be like so. The thing with proof of stake is that because of the way the system works, you have this trilemma problem. So you end up with having to pick two of the three. But we figured out a trick with proof of work where you can actually have, instead of one blockchain, you can have multiple blockchains in parallel that are basically form a graph. And they're all being mined in parallel, but it's a single network. So when Kadena launched, we had 10 chains. So we had 10 times the throughput of a single chain, network. And then about 6 to 9 months later, we showed in production that you can scale up a proof of work layer 1 cryptocurrency by going to 20 chains. It was actually mostly just a configuration flag that we had to change. And then the system at a certain block height was like, all right, we're switching to 20 chains now and go. And it just worked. And the crazy part of it is that as you go from 10 to 20, or from next we're going to do 20 to 50, as you go up, the network actually becomes more secure. This is hard to describe because it's related to probability spaces and a bunch of other stuff. But like if you've heard of like orphans in Ethereum, Ethereum has a much lower confirmation time than Bitcoin. And one of the reasons is that it has orphans, which are these blocks that got mined but aren't being included in the main chain. And by including orphans, these uncles, with the actual blocks that go in the chain, you have more probabilistic samples, so more mined blocks at a given time. And by having more samples, you get to leverage effectively the law of large numbers, which just means that the more samples you have, the closer you are to the real distribution of a random variable. And because you have more samples, that means that you're more secure. That means that your security increases faster because you're more sure that you're on the right branch. That's how confirmation times and security works in these systems. So when we go from 10 to 20, we double the numbers because we have twice as many blocks coming out in a given time period. So the security actually goes up. The decentralization actually goes up too because you can have more miners. You can actually now mine directly to your own Kadena node without even using a pool. And we just discovered this like a few days ago. We just released, but it turns out that you don't actually need a pool to mine to Kadena right now. We've been running tests for the past few weeks, and it's because we have so many blocks coming out because we're at you have 20 blocks at a given height. So in a given time period, we're having like 20 times the normal number of blocks being produced. We had one miner that was running against Poolflare, which is our most dominant mining pool, and one miner that was running against the node that we had put this new Stratum implementation into, and they did the same, which means that you don't actually have to mine to a pool anymore, which is totally crazy and not expected. So like decentralization goes up. So and as we go from like 20 to 50, this will stay true. So it gets more secure, it gets more decentralized, and it gets more performant every time we fork it up. It's because proof of work is weird that this holds true. It's because of this weird probability space, like law of large numbers stuff. But the coolest part is that when we go from 20 to 50 chains, we don't need any more hash power. We just, instead of having the total hash power be divided by 20 to set the difficulty per block, we just divide it by 50, which means that, and the other side of it is that proof of work, 99% of the energy used for proof of work is hashing, which means that as we go from 20 to 50 chains, 99% of the energy used stays exactly the same because it's used for hashing. We just spread it over more blocks. So we get to scale effectively with no energy increase. So as time goes on and as we scale up, it just gets more and more and more efficient. So I'll stop there. It's a big download.
So cool. Oh man, that's so freaking awesome.
So sorry to bring it all the way back to like scaling and scalability. What scalability means is that you have a way to increase the throughput of your base layer protocol without bounds. We can go from 20 to 50 to 100 to 1,000 to 10,000 to 20,000 to 100,000 to 200,000 to a million chains. I can't imagine a world where Kadena hits a million chain graph that's running in production, because that's running at, I don't know, 100, that's like 10, it's a million chain graph. It's like probably 20 million transactions a second, which is there's no reason to do it. Like, it's just like the operational load of running a million chain graph would be huge, but you could do it. And that's what it means to be able to scale with, scalability means that you can just get to these ridiculous numbers if you needed to. We could never do that right now. we would need to have probably like 2 decades of adoption. And people would have to get incredibly professional about running large clusters to actually be able to maintain the network, because a million chains is going to require a server farm like per full node that's running. But by that point, that means that the adoption's there. That means the need is demonstrated, and people are like, yeah, let's do it. Let's fork from 500,000 chains to 1 million chains. Like, we need the extra throughput. 500,000 that's running at like 1.5 million transactions a second, and like we are continually congested and the gas prices are going up. Like, let's fork it up. So the largest graph that I know of that we could run Chainweb on in the billions. These all just come out of graph theory. They're just degree diameter problem solutions. So they're just like, how do you make the most efficient graph for a given structure? And their solutions well into the billions. Now we'll never go there. I don't suspect that we'll ever see 100,000 Chainweb, because I just don't think a global settlement protocol needs more than like 1 million transactions a second. And even getting to 1 million transactions a second, I think, is going to take probably like 5 to 10 years. And that's the cool part of Chainweb. We get to go slowly. And I think the big watershed moment for Kadena is going to be next year. I suspect we're going to have to fork up to 50 chains. Now, I could be wrong. My director of engineering, Doug, who's on here before, he's like, nah, man, I don't think we're going to get there for like 3 or 4 years. And you might be totally right that the throughput that we have now is enough. But if things start to get congested, then once they start to hit about 50% utilization on average, then it's time to start looking at, all right, I think it's time to actually like fork and upgrade the network to 50 chains. And the cool part of it is, when we did it the first time, not that many people were watching, because we didn't have the big VC daddy who was basically taking us to all the different balls to make sure that everyone loved us. Like, we're like kind of the scrappy underdogs of the story, because we didn't go proof of stake. And we never got the major VC, like that $80 million VC investment that just like, okay, we're going to buy most of your foundation coins because I want to own your protocol. And then I'm going to take you, and your protocol is going to be successful and you'll do great. But like, let's not kid ourselves. Like, I have voting rights. It's proof of stake and I own the majority of tokens. We didn't go that route. So it's always been a slower game for us. When we did that first fork to 20, not that many people were watching. But this time around, when we fork up from 20 to 50, everyone's going to get it.
The world's gonna watch.
Holy shit, this was clogged, the gas prices are going up, now it's not clogged, and the gas prices are back down. And they can do it again and again and again as we need. And that is what scalability means. But we're gonna have to show it in production.
When you say global adoption is roughly, what would you say as far as transactions per second? And I don't want to talk down, and I know you don't either about any other blockchain. I'm just trying to help educate people. I know we saw Solana break at about 400,000 transactions per second. Was that just because of the game launch? And when a blockchain stops producing blocks, like what does that actually mean for people that don't understand it? Is that a major security risk as big as I think it is? Or is that something that like, okay, our blockchain just stopped producing blocks, well, we'll fix it and it'll be back up in a couple of days, don't worry about it kind of thing?
That's hard. The 400,000 number, that breaks my suspension of disbelief that it ever got anywhere near that high. That's not a full number for a single chain blockchain, at least if you're doing a real performance test and you're actually tracking. And like, if that number might be real from a certain point of view, which is another way of saying that it's a lie. Like, I don't really understand how you can have a single chain blockchain operating at that speed. Like, that's faster than, for a generic read, write update to a database, that's faster than most databases centralized on one server on a high performance server can hit. Not entirely true. Like, there are some that can go faster, but for a generic, like, just database transaction that is just user driven, like 400,000 transactions a second just for a database is incredible. And it's like a very specialized thing to be able to do. So I'm suspicious of that number. I mostly look at Solana and I see like, right now I think their transaction count on their per second on their website, last time I checked, was like 2,500 transactions a second. I see that their mempool usually has a wait time. And to me, like, what your performance is once your mempool has a wait time, that means you're congested. And then whatever transaction per second you're doing, that's your speed. Now there might be other details there that I'm missing, but I'm suspicious about it because Solana's made a lot of claims about their performance. I used to have to sit through their pitches when we were also pitching, and they used to claim 710,000 transactions a second over 1 gigabit of fiber, which, for the record, if you do the math, isn't enough space per transaction for a public key and a signature and any smart contract. Like, literally, if you do the math, the actual transaction is too small to work. So I'm always very suspicious of their performance claims, and I've been for years. So, your main question was like, the network shut down, they had to restart it. Yeah, that's not a good look, and that's pretty dangerous. But, the regulators are the regulators, and we'll see where it goes.
What do you mean by, Oh, because when they stop producing blocks, there's that security threat. So it's
No, I mean, I just don't know how to, like, if you came to me and you told me to shut off the network,
Yep.
I wouldn't be able to tell you how to. Like, I don't know. Like, oh, like, but if, like, Solana knows how to reset their, like, shut it down and reset and restart it. Blockchains aren't supposed to stop. They aren't supposed to break and, like, have to get reset. They're supposed to be this thing that it kicks off and then it just keeps going. That's the whole point of a blockchain. They don't, like, they're not supposed to have that failure mode. Sure, they can stall, but that's like how proof of work works. You know, this one, it sounded like it needed like a full on, like the thing broke and like it needed a major fix and it needed like this coordinated like kickoff thing. You know, we had a DOS attack, I think a couple months ago, and sure, block production slowed down, but it's proof of work. Like it just means that block production was slow for a bit and it turned back on. It didn't even slow down that much. So yeah, it's weird, but I don't know how much of that matters at this point in crypto. So, you know, there's still a lot of it is just like, do you know the right people? Do you have the right investors? Are you on the right exchanges? And is the moment right? And yeah, and, you know, long term, I mean, EOS did that before. They had, you know, great investors. They were on all the exchanges. They raised a ton of money, had a ton of excitement. And now no one really talks about EOS anymore. And they were supposed to be the Ethereum killer. I do actually, I hope that the flippening happens and Ethereum shows the world that you can actually overtake Bitcoin. So I think that's important for crypto, period. And I also hope that at some point someone overtakes Ethereum just so that you can show that that is possible to do. Mm-hmm. You know, I think it'll make for a fairer competitive marketplace if the idea that like Bitcoin will never be usurped can at least be challenged. Will it happen? Yeah, maybe. I'd like to say that, you know, Kadena can go and overtake Ethereum one day. I don't really know how Ethereum's going to go, though, especially with Ethereum 1.5. So, yeah, we'll see. I mean, I suspect it'll take a while, but I think we might be able to do it.
So you're definitely on the tech side and educated enough to speak on this subject. What is your thoughts on when you go from a proof of stake to a proof of work blockchain? As far as when that, I mean, I'm just logically thinking it through. A majority of people right now that have probably less than $1,000 worth of Ethereum or holding on to that asset, you're not selling it because you're going to pay $100 in gas fees or $50 in gas fees just to sell your Ethereum or interact with it. So I think a lot of people are just holding on to the smaller amounts of Ethereum, which obviously is preventing that from interacting in the marketplace. And then you have the people that staked it. What was that, 2 years ago or 3 years ago now that they started that? You can stake and get
something like that.
So for 3 years, your asset's been tied up. And then now we know just by Shiba, like people want to throw their money at long shots, right? So they're sitting there watching ETH kind of not blow up, missing out on opportunities. Like on a psychological level, they're probably thinking, hey, I'm probably missing out. I wish I could use that. When it gets freed up, if Ethereum doesn't pop, like if it doesn't go off flawlessly, which I find it's hard to believe that it does. And even with what they're claiming is what they're saying, they're going to be able to do 400,000 transactions per second. But even so, that's not enough for real world adoption. Like best case, ETH 2.0 or 1.5 operating at its prime, the network's going to get clogged, right? Am I wrong? Am I missing something?
I don't know if 400,000 transactions a second isn't enough for like proper global adoption. It might be. It's at least in the ballpark. Like between there and 1 million, I think is probably the most that you'll need for a settlement layer. But I still haven't seen the scaling solution for Ethereum, at least not one that makes any sense. And I've been watching for it for years. Like their first step is to do ETH 1.5, which is ETH with proof of stake. And that'll be faster. But I'm quite sure that is not the sharded version. Or I've missed a major white paper and also major like development just on the engineering side of like, oh, this is like how Ethereum's actually going to shard their protocol, their proof of stake protocol. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if they end up going with something closer to Near. They're the closest I've seen for a sharded proof of stake. I think I still have security concerns for when Near goes from like however many shards it has now, but it actually like, let's say goes up 100 times. The problem with sharding a proof of stake network is that as you shard it, it gets less secure on a per shard basis, which doesn't happen with proof of work because proof of work is, you know, you're actually doing work that is measurable externally as opposed to proof of stake where it's all internally referential. So as you break that internal reference into smaller and smaller bits for more and more shards, it becomes easier to undermine the EVM. So, but from my point of view, I don't think the sharded high performance ETH 2.0 is going to be coming until at least 2025, if at all, frankly. Because, and this is the other part, like once you move to proof of stake, there were a bunch of projects that they justified their raises and their like the reason that investors should get involved in the project because they were going to drive user adoption. And if you were an early token holder, then you were going to make your money off of the gas fees in the network. So there is this cognitive dissonance that not a lot of people are talking about, which is that when you have proof of stake, and you have, the people who are the early in the genesis, the insiders who have usually the vast majority of the total tokens that will ever be unlocked. When you have those and they have voting rights over the protocol, they're collecting effectively rent from the users of the platform in the form of gas. Now, why would a VC, think of it this way, investors like to do rent extraction. It makes financial sense. Why are you going to, as a major investor or a major holder in one of these platforms, say, hey, we're going to try to fix gas fees by scaling? Because it's actually taking money out of your pocket long term, as opposed to what Ethereum's done, fix the gas problem by just burning the gas because we don't like the miners, which it causes a massive deflationary effect. But I don't see a proof of stake network actually scaling. And I don't even know if it's just because the technical side, which I have my major suspicions on, but I think it might be the economic side of, if Ethereum right now were proof of stake, I think that they would probably be talking about scaling to make the community happy. But at the end of the day, the people who would vote on the upgrade might be against it because it's going to be taking money out of their pocket. And whether or not you burn the gas or you collect the gas, proof of stake and major holder validators, that's still money that you're choosing actively to take out of your pocket. So there's a disincentive for proof of stake to actually scale, and no one talks about this. The proof of work doesn't have this problem. Where does proof work? We love our miners. We love having ASICs. We figured out how to use all of that energy and that community to scale a public blockchain, and we're cool with all of this. We want gas fees to be super low because the reason we have emissions that go for 120 years is because we don't want there to be some competition between the miners who want higher gas fees so they can get paid more and the users who want lower gas fees so it doesn't cost $1 million to run a freaking app. So the way we did it is that we have emissions that just last for 120 years. And people have asked, well, what happens at the end of that? And I'm like, if I'm alive at that point, it means we've solved immortality and gotten over global warming and a bunch of other stuff. So we'll figure it out when we get there. But we have the emission schedule is set up so that the gas fees shouldn't ever drive real profit on the platform. The emission schedule does that itself. It pays the miners. And then the gas fees on Kadena are really focused around spam avoidance. You just don't want people just filling up the network with a bunch of nonsense stuff. And outside of that, there's no reason to have gas be expensive. So long as it's expensive for you to just troll the network. After that point, fine. We don't need so long as everyone else incentivized. And that's how we built Kadena. So yeah, I have some suspicions in general about proof of stake actually scaling because it's going to be taking money out of the pockets of the people who are going to be casting the vote to actually scale.
Dang, that's deep, man. That's crazy. So let's go a little bit deeper. What part of getting Kadena launched were you involved in? And what was it like when you started to learn about the technology and where blockchain could go? At what point did you realize hey, we got Chainweb's the future. I figured out a way to scale it. Who on the team figured out how to create Chainweb? And what was it like when you guys came up with that idea and you guys started talking about it?
When we founded the company, I was focused on protocols. Stu was focused on languages. And so Chainweb was my child idea, whatever. I was the one who came up with Chainweb. My friends got pretty annoyed at me for about a month because I kept talking about this weird graph thing because I was just my brain was melting down. So Chainweb, I wasn't looking for Chainweb when we found Chainweb. What I was doing was I was actually writing a series of white papers. These are the early drafts. I don't even know if they've been fully published yet. And they're super rough. And at the end of them, I was teasing out this idea about what it means for you to have coroutines in a smart contract language. Because Pact, our smart contract language, has native coroutines. They're called Pacts. And they're a way of having, a function that has a certain number of steps. And if one of the steps fails, it can roll back. And it's a good way of doing interop. It's also a good way of doing escrow. It's just a nice way of modeling a lot of stuff that takes place in a financial or settlement environment. So the idea that I was playing with, in this final paper that ended up being called the Chainwebs as the first version was, okay, I have a language, I have a blockchain. I don't even know if it's proof of work, proof of stake, doesn't matter. It's running Pacts. There's this is our blockchain, and we have Pacts. How do I interact with Bitcoin? So I wrote down how that would work. I was all right, how do I interact with something that is like Bitcoin but doesn't have a high enough hash rate so that I can just look at the difficulty on the block hash and have security around that? I was okay, well, I need an oracle, fine. It's okay, so this works generically for every other blockchain. I know how to do interop between our chain and everything else. And this was going to be one of the major stories of Kadena early on was that we had this really easy way of doing interop. And then I was would happen, like we do it with, so I can have Pact interact with every other smart contract language and every other blockchain, and like this is how I do it. But there's one that it's not interacting with, which is itself. So I'm like, all right, well, what does it look like if I have, Pact talking to another Pact? I was like, well, that'd be weird. Maybe we just have two chains and they're running in parallel, and like you just split the hash between them. I was like, I like wrote that down. I was like, oh, that works. And I was like, that's weird. Like you really can just split the hash rate between two chains, and like it's just, I think it's actually more secure because it starts to have more samples from the hash rate, which is this probability space. I think it's weird. Can you do it with 3? And I was like, okay, you can do it with 3. I'm like, can you do it with n? And it was like, shit, you can do it with any amount. And it just gets more secure as you do. And it was like, I'm getting goosebumps now thinking about it.
I just did too. That's so funny. That's so crazy.
But like, it was very much a logical deduction that I wasn't looking for, and it just kind of like popped out. Holy crap. Like we got this. I told Stu, and Stu was really excited about it. And yeah, and then it was, off to the races. It was our first startup. And we, didn't have a huge background like in crypto, like we weren't in the Bitcoin space. So we had to build up all the connections and do the raises and built the company. And what I was involved in from like that point on was like the white papers, the raising. And then once we started to build up the team, Stuart, not a lot of people know this, Stuart's like 20 years my senior. So like, I hope to one day be as good as Stu is at programming. It's going to take probably about 20 years of experience to get there. I'm good, but Stu's just pretty fantastic. And he's also been he has a lot of experience like managing engineering teams. So it made more sense for me to go as like the traditional CEO role because kind of like I was pigeonholed into it because like it made eminent sense for Stu to be like focus on like building that team, running that team, like do the actual engineering R&D to like launch Chainweb. And then after we launched and after things have gone as they have, then last year it was like, I can take a break from being CEO. Like, you want to do it? And he's like, yeah, sure, let's do it. And he's done unbelievably this year. The coin price under his he's been CEO has just gone through the freaking roof, and I'm so proud of him.
Yeah, he is. I mean, when just listening to him talk when I interviewed him, like this guy, he's so smart, man. Like he tries his best to dumb it down for you, but he's just he's so smart, man. It's hard to explain to people, but you guys got, one heck of a team, and Doug too. Oh my gosh, where'd you guys find Doug? Was that like a no-brainer when you guys came across Doug? Because I feel like it should have been.
Stu's been trying to hire Doug. We tried to hire him at JP Morgan, and Doug I think went to Formation Labs instead. And then later on, so Doug Haskell, it was big in the New York Haskell space. He runs the New York Haskell meetup, and he's been doing that for a while. So like he's just kind of big in the Haskell community. And yeah, like Doug is, I have a few people that I always try to hire at like every gig that I'm at. And I usually get told no, but I just tell them, it's like, I'm going to try to hire you every place I go. So just like, just a preview, like this is just going to be a thing. And it's probably going to be also every 5 years if I stay that long enough. Just because like you're awesome. So, and Doug is like one of those for Stuart, because I didn't know Doug that well. I had met him a little bit, but Stuart had actually known him much better. And yeah, he was just crucial. And then Doug was what Doug brought was, a bunch of stuff. But one of the best things that he brought is the ability to like hire and like manage like engineers in an incredibly good way. Like he is the, oh God, I don't know.
He's good with people, man.
Phrase for this. Yeah, he is. No, he's like the esprit de corps of like he's like the embodiment of it or something. I don't know exactly how to put it, but like he is just fantastic at it. And then of course he's a baller programmer and is just a great hacker, just able to go like throw together that needs to get thrown together. So yeah, no, it's just the team is fantastic. And you haven't talked to Lars yet. I don't know if Lars is ever he's our like lead engineer on the protocol side. He is just incredible. So he's like 5 people in one. I don't know if he would ever do one of these or not. I'd have to ask. I don't think he's ever done one before.
And then I saw another a woman that was in part of your team in one of your guys' interviews, correct?
Yeah, so there like for women that are that are Canadian, there's Hee Kyun right now. There was Linda Ortega, who is currently at Twitter, and there's Monica Acquaintance. There's Anastasia Bez, who was our director of operations. And yeah, we've always tried to have a really good culture and also as diverse of a team as we can. This is a thing that Stu and I are just like very strict on, and we've been like that since the beginning. And it really stands out now when like we're all just like kind of looking down the barrel of, okay, this looks like it's our last job and I get to hang out with people I like and work on something interesting. The problem here, this is actually great. Mm-hmm. Like, are there any other friends that we want to bring in? Because like it's a party over here. Like like this is what I get to do now. This is fantastic. So Yeah.
That's it. That's so inspirational, man. I see you guys. I was at NYC NFT and they were really focusing on, what projects are bringing more women into the space because it's such a male dominated industry. And I was like, Kadena is, every time I see you guys in a video or if they're interviews or with a team, it's super diverse. And I was really impressed with that. And it's inspirational that you guys are always leading the way, it seems like, and you guys are finding variety.
It's hard. And hiring engineers right now is so difficult. Like the engineering, just in general, it's so difficult. But yeah, no, we do try.
Is that because there's a lack of talent? Well, now let's talk about that a little bit. What's it like trying to find engineers on a blockchain to write in a language that you guys created and nobody else in the world's ever really used?
It's super easy. Pact is easier than it's easier to pick up JavaScript. It's not like Ethereum, which I spent 3 or 4 months this summer trying to pick up Ethereum and I ran away screaming. I was like, I know that I could get something to work, but I wouldn't trust it with a dime because it's so the Wild West. So I'm like, you know what? Like, I'm just going to back off of this and we'll hopefully find someone else who can help with this because I'm just having a mild mental breakdown at the thought of actually building an application in Solidity that might run, $1 billion of flow. Moving away from that and then seeing all of the wrecked things that happened this summer, I feel rather validated by by backing off of it and just being like, you know what, we can do other things instead. This was for working on the bridge because I was planning to do a decentralized bridge, and the tech is just so not there on the Ethereum side that you either have to do something that has major regulatory problems, like Avalanche's bridge. There's just one key that is a wallet, I think, on the Ethereum side, which is safe because it's centralized and you can at least lock down that key. But it means that key is just a money transmitter, a major money, unregistered broker dealer. So that has huge reg problems. Or the other way of having a properly decentralized one. But we all saw how many times Polygon got hacked this year. I'm kind of glad that we've taken our time and instead we're going with the centralized route. We have Wrapped and CoinMetro working together to do a bridge from Ethereum to Kadena, starting off with Wrapped KDA, and then we're going to be doing BTC and Wrapped BTC, Wrapped ETH, and bringing all the stuff over. And anything on the edges that's more kind of on the decentralized side, we have this ability to just do swaps between chains. We haven't really rolled it out that much because there hasn't really been much of a need, but we know how we do it. So there's a big demand from the community for something that isn't this larger centralized system for bridging between protocols. But for hiring for Pact, to write in Pact, freaking easy. It's easier than JavaScript by far. It's closer. I describe it to engineers as it's like learning SQL, which is the database query language, and not learning a full-on programming language, because it's this very well-designed domain-specific language that makes it really easy to code in it. I feel more effective in Pact than I do in any other programming language. I can get so much done in so little time because for the things that a blockchain is supposed to do, it is so easy. So hiring for that's not that hard. Hiring for Haskell, but it's a trade-off between do you want an army of devs or do you want proficient and competent devs? And Haskell's more towards we'd rather have fewer that are better and working in a language that is harder but is safer. For a while, I think we were the only Haskell-based blockchain project that raised during the 2017, 2018 cycle that actually launched in Haskell. Because Dfinity famously had this army of Haskell engineers and they got nowhere. And they had to get rid of most of the Haskell engineers and then bring in Rust engineers because it can be tricky to actually keep Haskell engineers focused on actually code that runs and not interesting, intellectually interesting kind of researchy things. And we don't have that problem. We are very much we care about things actually running, getting stuff done. We don't care about using the weirder parts of Haskell that we tend to distract teams and delay launches. So hiring, right now it's just hard because the job market for devs is just crazy right now. And wages have just gone through the roof, just across the board, not even for crypto.
So what are starting wages for engineers in the industry? What would you say average across the board?
I've heard, and this is FANG numbers, that if you're a senior engineer, you're looking at your total comp is at least $500,000. But I've heard that it's not uncommon to be getting $1 million total comp at this point. Usually it's a lot of RSUs or something. It's crazy right now. You go into one of the bigger FANG companies, and then Facebook has to pay a 25% surcharge for your morals because people just don't want to work there, so they have to pay a quarter more just to get people, which is surprising. And Netflix pretty famously, they pay very well, but they have no benefits or anything. You just got to figure that out. And it's a different strategy, and I understand why they do it. But no, but it's very hard to find engineers right now. Crypto, when you get into Solidity, everyone who's good at Solidity has founded their own company in the last year and a half. also if you're thinking about people who are protocol engineers or who can do integrations with other chains or work on exchanges, most of the people who used to be on the exchange integration team at like exchanges, or the protocol integration team at exchanges, they left and founded their own thing too, or they were like person 2 or 3 at a startup. So like part of it is, especially in crypto, is that like everyone who has like 3 years of experience, they all just went and founded their company and raised money. So you can't hire them. They're literally unhireable for like 2 or 3 years. Like you can't pay a founder enough to like leave their company. You can buy their company and that's about it. Yeah, it's tricky, but thank God we're not looking for Solidity engineers. I have friends who run projects that have to work in Solidity, and they're hurting. It's just hard. Like most people that they run into have 6 weeks of I looked at a tutorial and now I'm a senior Solidity developer, because there's so few Solidity developers that you can basically call yourself senior after 6 weeks, and it's just crazy.
That is insane. So would you guys like to direct anybody that's interested in programming for you guys? Where can they get in contact with you guys?
Yeah, I mean, we have a, I think hiring at Kadena.io. I mean, I know right now we're looking for I think we're probably going to be looking for a good product or project manager type. And then dev-wise, yeah, we need some people who have serious experience on the peer-to-peer networking and on the actual Chainweb like node, so the actual like distributed systems side of the house.
And who is Jeff, by the way? You guys need to give him some credit, because anytime I have a question I need to ask, I mean, he is Johnny on the spot, 4 a.m., 11 p.m., like whatever. He's a community manager or something. He is just crushing it. Your whole team is. Everybody that anytime I need to reach out to you guys, you were the hardest one to get, and no doubt why, because you're so busy. But yeah, man, you guys are putting together a great team. So
yeah, no, I mean, Jeff is he's community manager. He's also came in during operations, community manager. I don't know what his exact title is at this point. He's just all over the place. Yeah, he's rocking it. I tell him to sleep more. He's just like, yeah. No, the hard part with Jeff is getting him to turn his camera on when you're having a video chat with him.
That's awesome.
Maybe
man.
You should have Jeff on here.
Yeah, let's get it. Let's get Jeff on here.
Mm-hmm.
So let's dive.
That's a good idea. We'll get him over his camera shyness.
There we go.
Yeah, Jeff's great though.
What's the let's dive a little bit into what is next for Kadena. When would we see smart contract, or not smart contract? When would we see like the first NFTs drop? When are we going to see the first DEX like fully deployed? And how long till we see borrowing and lending platforms over on Kadena?
Borrowing and lending, I don't know. I suspect probably Q1, just because of the rate that people are coming to us and being like, oh my God, I want to build.
Ooh.
So I wouldn't be surprised if that happens, but that'll be more community driven. For the DEX, that's blocked by the Wrapped Bridge launching, which is supposed to launch, I think, on Tuesday. What is it, the 15th or the 16th, something like that. So yeah, and then after that, I believe CADX launches. There might be like a slight delay, like a day or two, but that'll be the first proper Kadena swap. How do I put this? I mean, so we did Kadena swap as kind of like the experiment for it, and we put it up. And then CADX was not really spun out so much as like there were people who wanted to do like the Kadena DEX, and we were like, sure, take the code, like please do it, we will support you. Go for it. And we're super happy with that team. I think they're like 8 or 10 people now, and they should launch very quickly after the Wrapped Bridge goes. Because the Wrapped Bridge, I think, is going to be bringing over, I don't know if on day one it brings over Wrapped BTC and Wrapped ETH, but it should be pretty quickly doing that. Ooh. So the DEX launches then.
They're coming on the show in a couple days.
And then HF, and then the NFT platform, the website is ready, just not public. I'm working on, after this call, I'm going to work on the UI some more, because I'm working on one of the UIs for it. So it's mostly there. It's still like our first NFT mint a marketplace, which is this idea that not only are you going to do NFTs, but like when you make an NFT, you can actually attach a policy to it, either a custom one or just one of the standard ones that can set how royalties work and how redistributions work and how transfers work, all in an autonomous way. And so that really does allow you to actually like mint a whole marketplace with market rules, in addition to just minting an NFT. So there are a bunch of platforms that have come to us in the last like few weeks being like, hey, we heard about this thing. Can we use it? And we're like, we're getting there. It's going to be a couple days.
Yep.
So I don't know exactly when the launch of that's going to be. And I don't even know if I can tell you the name of the X. I don't know if that's been announced yet. They've got a nice name though. I like it. Sweet. And
so does that mean I can't get you to show us a little sneak peek of that UI that you're working on?
That one I think is actually public. Yeah, I know. I think that we open sourced it, and it's still a work in progress. This one, the UI is, I'm still working on it.
Okay, all right.
Now we'll save it for later.
All right,
Yeah.
cool.
No, the
Sure.
UI is that was going to take like at least a few more days, but because like I have to figure out what how to make the UX for you're going to mint a marketplace works. So
What do you mean by UX? I'm not educated enough on that.
well, just like how would like if you go to do an NFT, you're going to also have to specify what the operational policy of when that NFT changes hands is, and to do that, like there's some user experience work of like, okay, how do I make it so that it's easy to onboard a new NFT and to mint a new NFT and also set up the policy and then also like choose things. So right now I'm working on more of like the guts and the administrative stuff, and then I'm going to be doing like kind of like the main page of just like, okay, it's this step and then it's this step and then it's this step, and like this will make actual sense. Then you can just go and do all your own stuff. So, and the hope with a lot of these projects is that we do the first proof of concept, the MVP, and get it out the door, show people how to do it. And then someone's like, guys, like, can I like build a company around this thing and like take it over? And we're like, yes, please do. Like, we will also give you a dev grant, and we will also like probably invest. Like we're not looking to go the route of like Avalanche where they have like an army of like 100 devs. Like we would rather stay small and just enable the community to do stuff. Because we think it makes more sense. Like there's no precedence for a successful long-term crypto project to have like the core team, like the core company that like builds the protocol and maintains the protocol, be like 100 freaking engineers early on. Mm-hmm. No one does that. Like Ethereum was what, 15 people in the beginning? And it was only later that consensus got built up and this other stuff got built up on the side. But the idea that we can just big tech the next generation of crypto, it worries me a bit. Like, I don't really know if I like the idea of like the big VCs getting to define what decentralized means for this decade. I think maybe they shouldn't really get that much of a say, frankly, because if it's going to, their decentralized is not going to be already centralized. Yep. Their decentralized is going to be rent extraction. So not really that keen on it, but we'll see.
So would that be similar to saying that is similar, like Kadena will be like almost like an Amazon, where you're encouraging and supporting, you guys have the infrastructure, like I have an Amazon business. So then people are just going to be building protocols and dApps on Kadena and they'll run with them. And they will be as successful as they want to invest in their own business kind of way?
Maybe. I mean, the problem with Amazon is that every time someone builds something on their platform, they then clone it and steal it and kill them. So we won't be doing that.
Okay, outside of that, but yes.
Yeah, no, we don't want to be like running the NFT and running the DEX and running the loan platform and running all the other stuff. We want them to exist, and we will be very vehement in our support, both financial and reputational, and everything that we can do to be supportive of the community to build these things. Like this is it's pretty virgin territory. Like come and build, and like you will have major first mover advantage on our platform. And the cool part of like getting involved with Kadena, if you want to like you do a lending platform and you're looking for a platform to do, is that we haven't already gone. Proof of stake networks tend to do this 1,000 DEX really, really, really early on. And it means that, community adoption, I swear, is going to be harder. If it's harder to get involved in a protocol when the protocol is already like near what is probably going to be the peak of its worth. Maybe you can go up another like 10x. Like Solana, if it goes up 10x, will hit Ethereum. Mm-hmm. But if a project is looking for a home and you go to Solana now, it's like, okay, just let's say your project fails, but you have a position in Solana because you're just working in Solana. That position at most is probably going to go up 10x. So like I think it's very important that projects that like base layer protocols don't moon so quickly that they can't build their community. We've been building our Kadena army for like 2 years now. And like, as much as I like, part of me is like, no, like I want to move. And the other part of me is like, yeah, but I'd rather almost not and keep building the army up because this thing's going to be super valuable to have. Like these people who are in and who are here working on the stuff early on. So I don't know, there's a bunch of different parts to like this concept, but I think looking back at the way that the bigger proof of stake projects launched is not going to be seen as a great thing 5 or 10 years from now. It's going to be seen as a detriment. They're like, if you launch and immediately spike, that you end up not being able to build your community in a way that they really stick around. But
I agree.
I could be wrong.
I don't think you're going to be. I don't think you're going to be one bit. And it's crazy how everybody keeps telling me like, oh, you need to make more Kadena videos, you need to do this. And I'm like, but I don't want to see Kadena pump. I want to see you guys slowly grow and continue to grow like you are right now, where you see the entire market go red and what happens? Kadena retraces slightly. Everybody sees it as the buying opportunity of a lifetime. You guys find support and it stabilizes at that next higher level. You're not seeing those. Now, don't get me wrong, the 25 down to 15 was probably a big, but that's people think that's a sell-off. That's most likely a whale putting in a lot of money, which they ate up all the liquidity. It drives that price up, and then you just find that stabilization. I don't think it was a pump, and I think we're already up breaking all new time highs. You probably can't talk about price, so I don't even know if I can say this, but
I can accurately observe the state of the world, which everything you said is an accurate observation of what has happened. Yeah.
And it's just
At
cool
least that's what we think too.
Yeah, you see that stabilization in the market, and it's because people see the value in it and they're not selling it. It's not like a Shiba where they bought it and like, haha, I made all this money. Don't, because they know there's nothing there to support it. It's like, okay, I keep trying to educate people that it's, as far as being like the next Ethereum, you guys to me are Ethereum 3.0, and you guys are the only blockchain that's ever, everybody claims they're scalable, everybody claims they can do all these things, but when push comes to shove, like, can you? And you guys have proven it. And then, like you said, the next 50 is going to be probably the most exciting thing. I would love to have some of your team on the show, like right when that happens. If you guys can, I'm sure you guys will be all hands on deck, but if you can spare anybody you guys want to come on, I would love to. I'll be live streaming it for sure. That's so, you guys are always welcome to come on. And there was a couple more. Do we have a couple more minutes? How much time do we have?
Whatever.
Okay, cool.
On the thing that you had just said about, like people, like trying to educate people at the long term of this, is that, I think that in a year, Kadena is going to be sitting very pretty when you see that a lot of the, proof of stake, the scalable proof of stake projects have all gotten congested at their base layer and are now saying, oh, just use layer 2 and just use rollups. It's like, just like Ethereum, guys, you didn't solve the problem. It was a little bit faster. Whereas Kadena is going to be saying, it's like, oh, we're congested, we'll fork. And we're going to be sitting very pretty when we actually are able to demonstrate, it's like, this is why we stayed with proof of work, because we figured out how to scale and it needed proof of work. That's it.
Yep, 100%. I'm sure you guys are in contacts with Flux, but I don't know if you guys know how highly that company speaks of you guys. It's very rare, and Doug and several of your other team members were doing the same thing, but I've been in the game for a long time. I was mining Ethereum when it was $2.64, and I don't think I've ever really heard, they promote for you guys and you guys promote for them. I thought it was the coolest thing ever that you guys, it's almost like you guys don't see each other as competition. You guys see each other as opportunities, and you guys are growing together. And it's
I don't think they see us as competition. I know we don't see them as competition. We're working on different problems, and it's really helpful to have a project that's responsive and is able to get stuff done, that has the ability to operate certain computational models that there's certain things that proof of stake is good for, and there's certain things that the Flux setup is really good for. And those are usually around liveliness of we want to do we do incentivized full node operation. And it's just a community thing because you can't stake. So we're like, all right, we'll run a node and we'll fund a project that actually will pay out to the node operators. So we had Cellcore and to Flux, and then that gets distributed because they have a program that they can run in a decentralized way to actually do that payout and actually measure that the computation is being done. So there's bridging a little bit, but also there's a lot of redundancy. I like to see, I see Flux especially as this kind of wetland that Kadena gets to use, where we have this good relationship, and we have nodes that run there. We have Chainweb data, so there's the thing that's just behind our APIs. Later on, we have the relay that runs partially through there, and later on, we're going to have probably other stuff too that aren't things that make sense to run on chain. And while we could just run them ourselves, we'd rather other people do it, and we pay the community to do it. And Flux is just this good answer for that. So it's just they're almost like we can put certain computational models that we can't do into Flux, and Flux is happy to do it.
Yeah, you guys got what, 900 nodes?
900 or 1,000 or something. Yeah.
Wow. And what does that mean when you guys have nodes over there? Can you explain that a little bit? Are those, you guys just stake Kadena over there and you guys are earning, because they're proof of stake and proof of work, correct?
I don't know exactly. I believe they're proof of stake and proof of work. But there's some way that they have for making sure that you're running a Docker image, and then it's up and then it's lively. So what happens is, there's a certain amount of KDA that goes paid out to the people who have subscribed to run nodes through the Kadena public node program that Flux runs. And then their protocol actually enforces that, okay, these people were running it and they should get these payouts.
How do you feel about how they are adding parallel assets? When they bridged to Kadena, they added a parallel chain. I thought that was really, really smart. Am I overlooking that?
It seems like they not up to speed on that.
It seems like they can bridge to every ecosystem.
Yeah, I was talking to them about this yesterday, where I was saying we have our centralized bridge coming on with Wrapped, and guys, you already have a bridge to Ethereum and you have a bridge to us. Why don't you just make a bridge from us to Ethereum, and you can either you can charge a fee for it, and they're like, oh no, we wouldn't charge a fee. I'm like, oh, if you want to, you can charge a fee, but if it were me, I wouldn't, because there's a certain amount of they can draft in our wake on this, because they're helpful. Like they're like, I see them as like they're the wetland that absorbs the floodwater so it doesn't like inundate the town. And like that's kind of how we use Flux. And that is so useful. It's not like a diss or anything. It's like so freaking useful that we just have this wetland that we can go and shore up if we need to. That helps us when, let's say, the DOS attack happened, and like Flux existing was important. It wasn't like existential. If it hadn't existed, like Kadena wouldn't have failed. But it was super helpful because it gave us, I think, like an extra 12 hours to figure stuff out, that we like things could have gotten worse faster, as opposed to, you know, we have all of these nodes out there and they're hard to find and they're run by just a bunch of random people. And because of that, like it was actually hard. The person who was doing the DOS attack had to just start playing whack-a-mole, and it was hard. So like, I like that. And I'm cool with like us doing this together. Like, I really do hope that they end up actually doing some bridging, because I think it makes a ton of sense, given that proof of work and proof of stake. Proof of stake has the liveliness properties that you want for interacting between like a proof of work and a proof of stake ledger. So they could make for a great bridge, and I hope they do it.
That's awesome, man. I love hearing you guys talk so highly of each other. Because I think that's what the future of blockchain is. It's when all of these ecosystems coexist to a certain extent. I think there will be the Apples, the Amazons, the Googles of crypto. But I think that when Apple, Amazon, Google all start working interoperable, that's when you really get to see things take it to the next level. So man, Will, I could talk to you all day, man, but I know you're a busy guy, so we just hit that hour mark. Is there anything else you'd like to cover? I know I probably won't be a long time before I get you back on the show, so I feel like I don't want to let you go, but
no, I don't think so. Well, let me open up
I know. I mean, I would love. You were at one time. Were you ever a Bitcoin maxi?
One thing is, I'm not a CEO. Oh. I'm president. Stuart's CEO.
Oh, I thought you
CEO.
guys were co-CEOs. I thought there was.
Nope.
Oh, my bad.
We're co-founders, and there's CEO and president.
Were you a Kadena max or not Kadena maxi? I'm a Kadena
Bitcoin maxi.
Yeah, were you?
I was. So I read the white paper before it launched back when I was in college. I was curious about if proof of work was actually going to work. And then a few years later, I basically came to the conclusion that, okay, like proof of work actually works. It's been out there. Like, this is really cool. Was I ever a maxi about it? No. I don't know. I don't even know what that really means. Like, is it always going to be like Bitcoin on top, or Bitcoin's going to take over the entire world?
I think that how my outlook on like what a Bitcoin maxi is just seeing that Bitcoin becomes the best store of value. Because it has proof of work, because it's skin in the game theory, because of like the evolution of money, right? Where we are at a point where technology and money hasn't evolved since, the 1920 or whatever, 1905, when the, US fiat currency was created. And then you talk about the services that money provides for you, right? Durability, scarceability, portability, reliability, and scarcity. Bitcoin dominates gold. It dominates fiat currency on every level. And everything that the maxis say about why Bitcoin is Bitcoin and what makes Bitcoin Bitcoin, Kadena is the only cryptocurrency that I've ever found that, in theory, becomes the apex predator over Bitcoin because it meets the 5 services of money on every level. It's just that property thing that if you're excluding X amount of people from investing, and most likely the biggest, wealthiest people from investing in your currency, it's hard to bring that. And I was really hoping that with your SEC knowledge, you would have had that property thing, but I
imagine that'll get solved pretty quickly.
So where are you from, Will?
So I'm from New Haven, Connecticut, Hamden, Connecticut, technically. So, the end of the MTA line if you're coming out of New York, and went to school basically all along one road. The road goes from New Haven all the way up to Canada. Ended up going to college at Yale, which is on that road, is where the road starts. And then went to New York, got into software by way of doing software support at Ion Trading, which wasn't very pleasant. And then ended up as a data scientist at a place that I think is now just called Axial, but it's Axial Market. I think they do like kind of private equity. They're like AngelList, but for private equity sort of, or for just like buying secondary positions in companies. And I don't know if they're still around. I think they're doing well. And when I was there, I got an offer to go to the SEC as basically their like mad young hacker to just like come in and just like do stuff. And was data science for 6 months, and then went to the SEC. The SEC was super fun. I got to build a supercomputing cluster. Well, I got to design it. I didn't actually stay long enough to build it. But they have just these massive workstations because we couldn't buy servers. So instead, I found a server box that has feet, so that it's technically a desktop. But it's like a whole server board, like a massive one. It sounded like a freaking jet engine taking off. We had them in our offices for a bit. And you'd have to like bring in your Hawaiian shirt and shorts because it would just boil you out of the room after like an hour or two. But these things were beasts. They were the best machine that I've ever used, and I miss them every day. They're so good. They were like, I mean, back then it was like a decade ago. They were like 64 core, maybe it was like 128 core. They had half a terabyte of RAM. They had a co-processor. They had like 3 Titan GPUs. They were amazing. Fiber links, the whole 9 yards. And so we built that supercomputing cluster for doing high frequency trading analysis. And before that, I was building this program called NEAT, which is the National Exam Analytics Tool, which is now on version like 4 or 5 and is one of the backbones of the examination program at the SEC. So they go into a firm and they're like, give us your trade blotter, give us your trading data, we're going to consume it and then run reports on it. And up until that point, they did everything in Excel and it was all by hand. So they couldn't even like look at more than 1 million lines of trading. And for the first version of NEAT, the trick we used was I took SQLite, which is a really nice embedded database. That is just, I love SQLite, I've been using it forever. And made Excel a front end for that database because we couldn't get database approval at the SEC because they have problems with, back then they had problems with approving technologies. And so we built this thing, we were able to actually deploy it to about 1,000 desktops and a server-based thing. There's a whole team dedicated to it. I think most of it was written in Python and React at this point. Continuum is one of the major vendors for it. It's like a freaking amazing piece of technology. And they built a high-frequency trading lab on top of it. And then after that, I went to hacker school to go learn Haskell because I was just burnt out of working for the government.
What is Haskell?
After 2 years.
What is Haskell?
Haskell, the programming language. I've been trying to learn it for years.
Is that what Cardano uses?
Yeah, they use it. We use it. Dfinity used it briefly. Haskell is great. It's this functional programming language.
Why are you guys using it if you got Pact?
So Pact is written in Haskell, and so is Chainweb. So it's the language that we use to code the platform so that you don't have to use something anywhere near as advanced or difficult to learn. Like I take 3 months off from working to go to basically a writer's retreat, which is hacker school, and just learn Haskell. And the only way that I could learn it was I sat down. It's easier to learn now and the tools are way better now, but back then it was still pretty hard. And the only way that I could learn it was I got a book on how to implement Scheme, which looks a hell of a lot like Pact because it's also a Lisp. It's where the whole idea of using a Lisp came from, sort of. And Lisp for Pact. And I was just like, okay, I'm wax on, wax off. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm gonna follow the book. And by the end of the book, I was like, I know Kung Fu. I can do Haskell now. This is fantastic. And then went to JP Morgan because my friend from college was I think Stu's first hire at the Haskell group. A guy named Carter Shawrold, who's up in Boston now. And he's absolutely brilliant, and he's been working in Haskell forever. But it's just kind of like this niche programming language that not a lot of people use, but gives you a lot of benefits if you can actually use it in production. It's really, really nice.
So people don't have to learn Haskell because Pact dumps it down,
no.
And then they can just code in Pact, and Pact is super simple because you guys took all the complicated parts, made them, human readable code and user friendly, and then that's going to allow you guys to innovate at a level that most won't be able to compete with. Because once you guys get a fleet of people that are building on Kadena, at the rate that they will be able to out-program people that program in Solidity is, what would you say, 5 to 1, 10 to 1?
I would say somewhere between 100 and 1,000 to 1 of just the speed of how, because you don't have to it has formal verification built in. So in addition to all these other things, it's a domain-specific language, it's very simple. It's literally designed for lawyers to be able to read, if not also write. So it's like the technical capacity you need to use it is a little bit more than Excel, but not by very much. It's almost right there. And that is a major language that tons of people who aren't programmers learn. And part of the reason that Pact is designed to be so simple, so simple to use, is that it's designed to be safe. So there's no hidden stuff going on. It's designed to be simple is safe. So one of the founding principles of Pact is that it's going to be simple, because if it's not, you're going to have bugs like Ethereum has all the freaking time. So most of the classes of bugs that Ethereum programs have are literally impossible. All the reentrancy stuff, it's just gone. There's not even a thing. But and then you add on top of that safety and that simplicity that you have native support. And this is all mostly written in Haskell, native support for really complicated stuff, all the database access stuff. You don't actually have to you don't worry about storing a word 64 and then decoding it correctly. No, there's just there's native JSON types, and we handle all that stuff in the background, and all of that is just tested every way to Sunday. and you don't have to worry about it. You just like make a table and you write to the table and then you read from the table. Then the only stuff that you really have to worry about is if there's a logical problem in your program, like is there a bug because like you just did the wrong thing, and that's where formal verification comes in. So you make a token, it has a ledger table, account balances, so it's account and then like how many coins and like what keys guard that account. And when you specify that table, you can specify a model. This is a formal verification property. It's also in Pact, so it's really easy to actually specify this. And you can say, I want to formally prove that you cannot create or destroy coins. So it's always mass conservation. So no one can mint and no one can burn. Or I want to make sure that if I am accessing this row of the table, that like the only way to access this row of the table is if I have the key that is also stored in this row of the table. And what Pact will do is it takes this formal verification model, like this, like you just say that in mostly just like plain English. It's a little bit more than that, but not by much. You just say it's like, okay, like this table should do this, this, and this. Pact takes that and then it compiles a Z3 program in the background and actually formally it compiles a Z3 program for the model. It compiles a Z3 program, which is a SMT lib2 solver. Formal verification doesn't matter. The details are complicated to say the least. It compiles your program basically into math. It compiles your model into other math, basic properties, and then it compares the two. And Z3 will literally search the entire space of all possible inputs and outputs to formally prove that your program and your model agree. And the cool part is, and like the first time that it worked, we've had this actually happen twice now, when we upgraded the compiler the second time. There was a bug in the program that I was formally verifying that I hadn't spotted. And when the formal verifier first worked, I spent 2 days trying to debug the verifier because I thought it was broken because it was telling me there was a bug. And I wasn't used to the idea that the computer was going to actually tell me what the bug is in my program, not in the verifier, because the verifier was working. And finally I was like, oh my God, like there's a bug. There's like been a bug that's been sitting here for like a year and we didn't even know it was there. This is like our demo code. And there's just very stupid, simple bug. And we're like, oh, we forgot to put greater than 0 here. Well, okay, fine. Go fix that bug. And the next time we upgraded the compiler, it turned out there was a bug with Asian worked. It turned out like you could like do some stuff to yourself and like make some coins accidentally. And like the verifier, like the new version of it, found this bug, and the guys who were working on it, it wasn't me, we hired these great guys named Brian and Joel. They had this consultancy called Monarch. They used to work with us back at back at J. Morgan. And they built the second version of it. And they, for 2 days, were just like what's wrong? Like the verifier is saying like there's a bug, but like this is obviously no bug. And they finally read the output of the verifier, and the verifier was like, no, there's a bug. Like put these inputs in and you're gonna get the wrong result. And they finally did. They're like, holy shit, there's an actual bug in the program that we've been trying to verify, and the verifier found it. Like, what the hell? This program is like the Pact code that we wrote was like yay big. How was there a bug that we didn't see? But that's why you have formal verification. So yeah, your ability to implement and iterate in Pact is unparalleled compared to most programming languages I've seen, let alone most things on a blockchain that I've seen. Like it is so much safer, it is so much faster, and because everything's JSON native types, it's really easy to write front ends and like React for it too. You just like do a local call and like you get the data you need. That's just how I code them. And the hard part of front end is JavaScript, because React is great. JavaScript is a pain in the butt. CSS is dark art. It's not actually hard. It's a dark art, but it's not actually evil, as opposed to like JavaScript, which is basically evil. And it just is. It's like the minimum. It's like, until Solidity came along, I would have just been like, God, I didn't like things can't get worse than JavaScript. And then Solidity came along, and it's like, hold my beer. You're gonna be so much worse. So, Solidity wasn't supposed to be the long-term language. And this is one of the things that we spotted when we were at JP Morgan and looking at Ethereum. Like, they built 3 languages, and these are like the demo languages. Like, there's the EVM, and like they're like, someone's gonna build a better language next. And because these things are like, we didn't put that much time into the language. And then it turns out, the first thing that you build, like the first language that you build is going to get adoption. And then if you don't future-proof it so that you can actually like have other languages interoperate with it, then guess what? There's no other languages that are ever going to show up. So now, like, yes, there's the EVM, but they may as well just be a Solidity, like a Solidity script engine, because like very few people code directly in the EVM at this point. And even if they do, it's always compatible with Solidity because everything runs Solidity.
Yes. So
they're just kind of stuck. And like this is also the weird part of blockchains that I don't think people really got until like 2017 or 2018, which is that they're closer to supply chains in manufacturing than they are to traditional tech startups. Because in tech startups, like move fast and break things. And when it comes to blockchains and also like manufacturing, you can't iterate in production almost at all. And like we've seen very, very little iteration on the Ethereum front at the language level. And a big part of that is because it's so incredibly difficult to add or change things when you have, billions of dollars that are like locked up on the platform with the old technology. Like how do you go and you upgrade it? It's very, very difficult. It's like, if you have a bottle manufacturing plant, you can't just change the shape of the bottle that you're making out of glass willy-nilly. Like you can't just be like, oh, this one doesn't work, let's just try a new one. It's gonna be like, okay, that's a 6 to 9 month effort just to like change that one little part of the supply chain. And so it's why we're confident in Kadena. It's why we took so long with it, because we were looking at 2030. And when we founded Kadena, the founding philosophy was we looked at 2030 and we're like, assume blockchain is a thing and is widely adopted. What features do we know are going to be necessary for that to be true? And then we got to build them now, because we know that once we launch, we're not going to be able to build them later. Or at least like it's going to be very difficult to do any major iteration once we're launched. And that's why we spent years building the thing. And years refining it. Pact, when Kadena launched, I think Pact was like a 3 or a 4 year old language at that point. Just like with production use cases from like our enterprise experience and just private chain experience. And like because of that, Pact was, I think, already on like version 3, is getting up to version 4. And then the next one is going to be version 5. And that one will be cool because you'll be able to actually compile it down to WASM. Like there'll be a little WASM engine. So anything running WASM will actually be able to compile and execute Pact programs. But that's probably for like the next 2 or 3 years. It's going to take a little while to get there.
Wow, man. That's so crazy. Where can everybody find you at? Are you active on social media? Let's let everybody know where they can reach out to you and follow you on social media. And are you active in the community Telegrams, Discords?
Yeah, I'm on the Discord somewhat. I'm on Telegram, probably on Telegram like once a day. It tends to be a bit of a time sink, so I try to limit my time on it. I'm on Twitter. We'll get, my name is down there.
Yep.
I think it's _WJ Martino or something like that.
Yep. On Discord,
but yeah, we can also just get a little thing to put up that actually has all of it.
Man.
But those are the only major things. I stay away from Facebook like the plague, with the exception of WhatsApp, because some people are on WhatsApp and that's it. And that's okay.
That's the only way you can
but you also want to talk to me, like get on Signal, but I just use it mostly for private communication.
Perfect, man.
Yeah, and also, I want to give a shout out to the whole community. Like the Kadena Army has been fantastic. Now that we've gotten past, frankly, $10, like we've gotten over the exposure hurdle, and I'm so thankful for it. And I'm thankful every day for just like going on Twitter and being able to like just have backup when I say things. Because there was a long time where if I went on and pointed out that, hey, there's cognitive dissonance between proof of stake and scaling, because that's going to decrease the rent extraction that the major stakers get, that people would just either like ignore it or would just be like, nothing, and like stop talking. And now I can go on Twitter and like I can actually say things and I can like have backup. And when people do like YouTube videos and they don't really look into the project, and it's just like, oh no, I just want to like speak badly about Kadena, I don't have to be the one who's driving into the comments being like, dude, what the hell? You didn't even like try to look. Like you couldn't find our white paper. It's on our freaking website. Mm-hmm. So this happened recently. Like it's like the whole community, especially like it's really cool that we've been doing this for now like 2 years, and we have community members who have been along for the entire ride, and just like watching them grow. Like Thanos on like Telegram, he came in like not really knowing how to code, and now he has like pretty sharp front ends and like cool projects that he's working on. I'm just like, dude, this is amazing. Like you've done like really freaking well. And like your Pact code is like as good as Stewart's at this point. Like you're really good at this, and it did not take you very long to get here. So, but that's like the dream of Kadena, and like seeing people actually do it in the early adopters. It's just like, I'm glad we have like that team and the community along for the ride, because it's just been a party, and it's been a lot of fun.
Man, I can't thank you guys enough for giving me the opportunity to be a part of that community, because when I found your project, I didn't even buy it at first, and that's so funny because so many people reach out to me like, hey, we found Kadena, what do you think about this coin, or what do you think about this coin? I'm like, listen, it took me 2 weeks of doing research before I bought Kadena. Like I can't just look at a project for 2 seconds and give you any type of good investing advice. You really need to do your own research and dive deeper in the project and actually understand what it's about. And yes, I had the opportunity that you guys came onto the show, but you guys are always active in all the communities. Like if people want to learn anything about Kadena, your Telegram is awesome. I mean, Jeff, your community manager, is on top of it. I mean, the community's strong, you guys, and it's an honor, man. I don't know how to explain it. It makes me feel so good to be promoting for a project that I actually believe in. I see the longevity in, and for the first time, I've had probably at least 1,000 people DM me and say, thank you. You changed my life. I watched your video on Kadena. I believe in the project. I joined the community. I packed my bags, and this is the biggest my portfolio has ever looked. I mean, I could go on. I'll throw some on the screen here, and it's just crazy the amount of people and it's because you guys are the real deal, in my opinion. Like, this is something that I want to believe in. It's something that, you know, I did live. You guys watched me sell 70% of my portfolio of crypto and put it all into Kadena. You know, I wish I would have did it sooner. Obviously, everybody does, you know.
Yeah, we're just getting started though.
I agree.
Like,
man.
it's next year is going to be really something.
Do you guys have any plans now? I've watched Polygon, Avalanche. Everybody is in HBAR. Everybody is doing these like huge grants. Hundreds of millions of grants. Does Kadena have anything like that to incentivize, or do you guys think that you won't need to do anything like that because it's, or how do people, if they want to build on Kadena, is there any funding that they can get from you guys, or?
So as for an ecosystem fund, no comment. As for dev grants, we do have dev grants that you can go online and apply for. And we have a bit of a backlog that we're going through right now, but there are 4 or 5 really cool projects that have applied to come in for that. But yeah, I expect that whole area to expand dramatically in the near future.
Awesome, man. Great to hear it, man. Well, it was an honor, Will. Thank you so much for coming on the show, man. I know you're busy, so I won't take up too much of your time, but it was really an honor, and this is a great interview, so I can't wait to share it with everybody.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thanks for taking the time.
Yep, have a great day.
Yep.
All right, what up, YouTube? Good to see you guys today. I wanted to start things off by saying special thanks to everybody in the Kadena army, everybody that's gone out of their way to, you know, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, support the channel. The first time I started making videos on Kadena, I think the price of the coin was like $1.40, and we hit almost $29 this week. What an amazing journey, and I honestly think it's just getting started. So it's really a privilege and an honor to be promoting for such a great company. And I don't even know if promoting is the right word. Yeah, it's promoting. All right. And I want to make things very clear. I've never been paid or given a penny by the Kadena, and not an NFT, not a merch, nothing, not a drop. I found this project and I saw the potential in it, and it's so advanced and the technology is so on such a level, like so many levels above every other cryptocurrency in the game. And we're also used to hearing every blockchain is infinitely scalable. We're going to solve this problem. We're going to solve that problem. So when a company kind of tells you that, yeah, you know, A, B, and C, you're kind of like, okay, cool. Like, even when Doug came onto the show and he was explaining the tech, it took me a while to actually like believe and like understand. I like had to go back and do more and more research. So really just a big special shout out to everybody. I can't thank you guys enough. Everybody that goes out of their way to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I can't wait for Kadena's DeFi to get popping so that way we can get to yield farming, staking, and earning those rewards. And I really want to go out of my way to make sure that I help educate you guys and show you guys how much potential there is to take your current cryptocurrency, use that, stake it, borrow, lend, and actually continue to grow your portfolio no matter which way the market's headed. People are like, oh, bear market wins the bear market. I'm like, if price could just run sideways, the amount of money that you can make in DeFi when that's happening it's astronomically crazy. So before I overtalk it, you guys know what time it is. Let's go. Special thanks to Will for coming onto the show. I can't thank you enough, buddy. It was an honor to have you on the show, and you're always welcome. I know you're super busy, so if anybody else from the Kadena team would love to come onto the show, I would love to dive into any new projects that are actually launching on Kadena as well. So if you're interested in building on Kadena, or you're looking to build on Kadena, or you get approved to build on Kadena, please send me a DM. We'll bring you on the show. We'll help grow the community. Love you guys. Can't wait to see you guys in the next video. Peace.